The chamber was enormous. Dr. Han Jiwoo stood in the center of a circular platform that glowed with soft blue light. Above him, around him, everywhere he looked, alien faces stared down. Some had too many eyes. Others had no eyes at all. Some breathed air like him. Others floated in containment fields filled with purple gas or existed as clouds of glowing particles. This was the Galactic Council, and they were laughing at him. Jiwoo kept his face calm. He had practiced this moment for months. Behind him stood Ambassador Kang Dahyun, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. Kang had been humanity's voice to the galaxy for 15 years. He had faced this mockery hundreds of times before. "Please," Jiwoo said, his voice amplified across the massive chamber. "If you would just look at our data." A sharp clicking sound cut him off. One of the Vixari delegates leaned forward. The insect-like creature was 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a head that looked like it belonged on a mantis. Its voice came through the translation device as high-pitched and amused. "Data? You call those scratches data?" The Vixari's mandibles clicked again. "We have been traveling between stars for 20 million of your years. Your species discovered fire just yesterday in cosmic terms." Laughter rippled through the chamber, not just from the Vixari section, but from dozens of other species. Jiwoo felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to stay calm. A different voice boomed out, deep and resonating. "The human presents theories about faster-than-light travel." This came from the Thalron section. The crystalline beings glowed with internal light, their bodies made of something that looked like living diamond. High Counselor Vethrak spoke again. "We mastered such travel before your son was born. What could you possibly teach us?" Jiwoo opened his mouth to respond, but Kang placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. The ambassador stepped forward. "Honored counselors," Kang said. His voice was steady, diplomatic. "We seek only the opportunity to prove ourselves. Humanity requests provisional membership in the Federation. Provisional membership requires a species to demonstrate advanced capabilities," said an Oriath representative, the energy-based being pulsed with different colors as it spoke. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are primitive. Your science is built on foundations we abandoned as incorrect 3 billion years ago." More laughter. Jiwoo could feel heat rising in his chest. He had spent his entire life studying physics. He had 3 doctorates. He had made breakthroughs that revolutionized human understanding of quantum mechanics, and these beings treated him like a child showing them crayon drawings. "Perhaps," Vethrak said, and the chamber fell quiet. When the High Counselor spoke, others listened. "Perhaps we have been too harsh." Jiwoo felt a flicker of hope. "Perhaps," the crystalline being continued, "we should give humanity a chance to prove their claims." The way he said it made Jiwoo's hope wither. This was not kindness. This was a setup, the Kepler run, Vethrak announced. Murmurs spread through the chamber. "Humanity wishes to join the Federation. Then complete the Kepler run in under 10 standard days. Do this and we will grant provisional membership." The chamber erupted. Some species laughed harder than before. Others made sounds that the translators couldn't process. Jiwoo looked at Kang, confused. "What's the Kepler run?" he whispered. Kang's face had gone pale. "A test route through unstable space. It's considered one of the most dangerous navigational challenges in the galaxy." "How long does it usually take?" "The fastest recorded time is 14 days, Kang said quietly. "By the Thalron Empire's best ships. Most species take 3 weeks or more. Dozens of ships have been destroyed attempting it." Jiwoo stared up at Vethrak. The crystalline being's body pulsed with what might have been amusement. This wasn't a test. This was a death sentence wrapped in false opportunity. "We need time to consider," Kang started to say. "We accept," Jiwoo said loudly. Every being in the chamber turned to look at him. Kang grabbed his arm, but Jiwoo shook him off. "Humanity accepts your challenge," Jiwoo said again. "Give us 6 months to prepare. Then we will complete your Kepler run in under 10 days. The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. It echoed off the chamber walls and seemed to go on forever. Jiwoo stood straight, his hands clenched at his sides, and endured it. Finally, Vethrak raised one crystalline limb. The chamber quieted. 6 months, the High Counselor said. "We will even provide you with the route data and safety information. It will make no difference, but we are curious to see how spectacularly you fail." The council session ended. As Jiwoo and Kang were escorted out, aliens in the corridors stopped to stare. Some pointed. Others made sounds that needed no translation. They were mocking him. Back in their small quarters on the station, Kang turned on Jiwoo. "What were you thinking?" the ambassador demanded. "You just committed humanity to an impossible task. When we fail, and we will fail, we'll be a joke for the next 1,000 years. We won't fail," Jiwoo said. "How can you possibly? Because we have something they don't." Kang stared at him. "What? What could we possibly have that species millions of years more advanced don't have?" Jiwoo pulled out his datapad. On it was a file marked with the highest security clearance. A file containing research that most of Earth's own scientists called impossible. Research by a dead professor that the academic community had rejected. Research that might get them all killed. "We have desperation," Jiwoo said. "And we have Dr. Choi Yuna." He opened the file. Inside were equations that bent the rules of physics. Designs for a drive system that shouldn't work according to any established theory. Test results that other scientists refused to believe. "What is this?" Kang asked, leaning closer. "This," Jiwoo said, "is how we're going to make the galaxy stop laughing." Kang read for several minutes, his eyes growing wider. Finally, he looked up at Jiwoo. "This is insane," he whispered. "Yes. This could destroy the ship. Kill everyone aboard. Yes. But if it works, Jiwoo said, "we change everything." Kang was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll send the message to Earth. You better hope Dr. Choi is as brilliant as you think she is." Jiwoo looked out the window at the vast space station. Thousands of alien ships came and went, representing civilizations that had mastered the stars while humans were still living in caves. They had technology humanity couldn't dream of. They had millions of years of experience, but they had also stopped asking certain questions. They had perfected their path and never looked for others. Humanity was about to show them what desperation and fresh thinking could do. In 6 months, the galaxy would either witness humanity's greatest triumph or its most catastrophic failure. Either way, they would remember this day. They would remember the moment a human stood before the assembled powers of the galaxy and refused to back down. Jiwoo smiled grimly at his reflection in the window. Let them laugh now. In 6 months, everything would change. Dr. Choi Yuna didn't sleep much anymore. She stood in the main engineering bay of the Seoul Orbital Shipyard, staring at the half-built ship that would either save humanity's reputation or end dozens of lives. The Prometheus hung in the construction frame like a metal skeleton waiting for flesh. "You look terrible," a voice said behind her. Yuna turned to see engineer An Ji-hoon walking toward her with 2 cups of coffee. He looked almost as tired as she felt. "Thanks," she said, taking one of the cups. The coffee was terrible, but it was hot and had caffeine. "That was enough. How much longer?" Ji-hoon asked, looking up at the ship. 3 months until launch. Maybe less if we skip some of the safety tests." "We're not skipping safety tests," Ji-hoon said firmly. "I'd like to die of old age, thank you." Yuna smiled despite her exhaustion. Ji-hoon had been her assistant for 5 years. He was careful where she was reckless, practical where she was theoretical. He kept her grounded when her ideas flew too far into impossible territory. "The council approved the final design," Yuna said. "Captain Lee Minho accepted command yesterday, I heard. Also heard half the crew resigned when they learned what drive system we're using." Yuna's smile faded. "Can you blame them?" Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Shin says the math works." "Dr. Shin Hana is the only other physicist on Earth who believes the math works," Yuna replied. "Everyone else thinks we're crazy." She pulled out her tablet and opened a file she had looked at thousands of times. The formulas filled the screen, elegant and terrifying. At the top was a name, Professor Park Sunho. "Tell me again," Ji-hoon said softly. "Tell me how this is supposed to work." Yuna had explained it 100 times, but she did it again. Maybe saying it out loud would make it feel more real. "Every ship in the galaxy moves through space using the same basic principle," she began. "They bend space around them or punch through into other dimensions or use exotic matter to create bubbles. But they're all still moving through space. They're trying to go faster." "Right." Professor Park asked a different question. "What if we don't try to go faster? What if we make the distance shorter?" Ji-hoon nodded. He had heard this before, but he listened patiently. "Quantum entanglement," Yuna continued. 2 particles connected across any distance. Change one, the other changes instantly. The professor theorized that if we could create cascading quantum collapses in a specific pattern, We could fold space itself. And the ship doesn't move faster, Ji-hoon said. Space just becomes smaller around it. Exactly. Yuna zoomed in on one section of the equations. The cascade drive creates ripples in space-time that overlap and reinforce each other. It's like folding a piece of paper. The distance between 2 points becomes shorter because we're changing the shape of space itself. But the professor died before he could test it. Yuna felt the familiar ache in her chest. Professor Park had been more than her teacher. He had been the only person who believed her wild ideas had merit. When he died 5 years ago, the scientific community had celebrated. They called his theories dangerous nonsense. He died because the research accident, Yuna said quietly. But his work wasn't wrong. I've spent 5 years checking every equation, running every simulation. It works, Ji-hoon. It has to work. The International Space Council tried to cancel the project. Ji-hoon pointed out. Admiral Beck stopped them. Yuna looked across the shipyard to where the Admiral's office overlooked everything. She's the only reason we got this far. As if summoned by her name, Admiral Beck Soo-jin walked into the engineering bay. She was a small woman in her 60s, but she carried herself like someone much larger. Officers twice her size stepped out of her way. Dr. Choi, the Admiral said. We need to talk. Yuna's stomach dropped. What happened? The council voted again this morning. They want to pull the plug. Admiral Beck's face was grim. They're calling it too dangerous. They say if something goes wrong, we could create a cascade that tears a hole in space-time. That's not, Yuna started. But the Admiral held up a hand. I know. I've read your reports. I've had 3 other physicists review the math. But the council is scared. She paused. Can you guarantee nothing will go wrong? Yuna wanted to lie. She wanted to say yes, everything would be fine, there was no risk. But she had too much respect for the Admiral to do that. No, she said honestly. This has never been tested at full scale. The simulations look good, but reality doesn't always match simulations. There's a chance, a small chance, that activating the cascade drive could cause unpredictable effects. How small? Honestly, I don't know. Admiral Black looked up at the Prometheus. I'm putting my career on the line for this, Dr. Choi. If this fails, I'll be remembered as the fool who killed 50 people and humiliated humanity in front of the entire galaxy. And if it works? Yuna asked. The Admiral smiled. If it works, they'll probably name a moon after you. She turned to leave, then stopped. You have 3 months. Make me look smart. After she left, Ji-hoon let out a long breath. No pressure, right? Yuna laughed, but it sounded slightly hysterical. She looked at her tablet again, at the professor's equations. Somewhere in those numbers was either humanity's salvation or its doom. Come on, she said. We have a drive core to build. The next 3 months blurred together. Yuna barely left the shipyard. She slept in her office when she slept at all. Dr. Shin Hana joined her, and together they refined the cascade drive's design. Every calculation was checked and rechecked. Every component was built to specifications so precise that they had to invent new manufacturing techniques. Captain Lee Min-ho visited often. He was younger than Yuna expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. He never seemed worried, which she found both comforting and slightly insane. You really think this will work? He asked one day as they stood in front of the completed drive core. It was a sphere 3 meters across, covered in strange crystalline structures that glowed faintly blue. I think the math says it should work, Yuna replied carefully. That's not the same thing. No, she admitted. It's not. Minho was quiet for a moment. I read Professor Park's original papers, the ones the journals refused to publish. He was brilliant. He was. He was also called a dangerous lunatic by most of his peers. Yuna felt her temper flare. He was right, and they were too scared to see it. Minho held up his hands peacefully. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying I understand why you're doing this. You want to prove he wasn't crazy? I want to prove his work mattered, Yuna said. I want to show that asking different questions can lead to different answers. The galaxy thinks they know everything because they've been around longer, but maybe being late to the party means we see things they missed. Or maybe it means we get ourselves killed trying to catch up. Maybe, Yuna agreed, but we have to try. 2 weeks before launch, the crew assembled for the first time. Yuna watched from the observation deck as Captain Minho addressed them. Pilot Kwan Hyeri looked eager and excited. Navigator Kim Taejin looked nervous. Medical Officer Dr. Yoon Seo-young looked grimly prepared for the worst. Security Chief Park Jiho stood at attention like he was still in the military. 50 people total. 50 lives depending on her equations being right. I won't lie to you, Minho told his crew. This is dangerous. The drive system is experimental. We might fail. We might die. But if we succeed, we change everything. We show the galaxy that humanity deserves respect. Yuna left before the speech ended. She couldn't watch anymore. Back in her office, she opened Professor Park's file one more time. At the bottom was a note he had written just before the accident that killed him. If I'm wrong, the universe will correct me. But if I'm right, we'll see things no one else has ever seen. Worth the risk. Yuna closed the file and looked out at the Prometheus. In 2 weeks, they would find out if the professor had been right. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's science. Soon, they would see what that science could do. The Andromeda approach was crowded with ships. Captain Lee Minho watched through the view screen as vessel after vessel appeared. They came from all over the galaxy. Hundreds of different species, all here to watch humanity fail. Counting 347 ships, Navigator Kim Taejin reported. More arriving every few minutes. Any of them friendly? Minho asked. None sending greetings, sir. Minho wasn't surprised. In the 6 months since Dr. Han Ji-woo had accepted the challenge, not a single alien government had offered encouragement. Most had sent messages predicting disaster. A few had offered to buy the Prometheus after its inevitable destruction, presumably to study what went wrong. Captain, pilot Kwan Hyeri called from her station. The Galactic Council is hailing us. Put them through. High Counselor Vethrak's crystalline face appeared on the screen. The Thalron's body pulsed with light. Captain Minho, the counselor said, your time begins when you cross the starting marker. The route data has been transmitted to your systems. Do you wish to withdraw? There is no shame in recognizing impossibility. Minho smiled politely. We're ready to begin, Counselor. Very well. There was something in Vethrak's tone that might have been pity. The betting pools favor your destruction within the first day. Please try to make it interesting. The connection cut. Hyeri turned in her seat, angry. Betting pools? They're betting on when we die? Let them, Minho said calmly. We're about to make them all lose money. Dr. Choi, how's our drive? Down in engineering, Yuna's voice came through clearly. All systems green. The Cascade drive is ready. Minho took a deep breath. This was it. He thought about calling Earth, saying goodbye to his parents just in case. But he had done that already. Now is the time for action, not sentiment. All crew, prepare for jump, he announced. Kim, set course. Hyeri, take us to the marker. The Prometheus moved forward smoothly. Through the view screen, Minho could see the starting marker, a massive energy gate that would record their passage. Beyond it was empty space, but the route data showed what lay ahead. Unstable regions where space itself twisted. Gravity wells from collapsed stars. Radiation storms that could strip a ship's hull. And somewhere in the middle, the maelstrom. 3 black holes dancing together in impossible orbits. Crossing the marker in 3, 2, 1. The gate flashed as they passed through. Somewhere clocks started counting. We're committed now, Kim said quietly. Dr. Choi, Minho called. Activate the Cascade drive. In engineering, Yuna stood before the control panel with engineer An Ji-hoon beside her. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had checked everything 1,000 times. The math was solid. The simulations were perfect. But Professor Park had thought everything was right too, and he had died. Doctor? Ji-hoon said gently. Yuna pressed her hand against the panel. Initiating cascade sequence. The drive core began to spin. The crystalline structures that covered it lit up. First blue, then purple, then colors that had no names. The light grew brighter and brighter. On the bridge, everyone felt it. Reality seemed to shiver. The stars outside the view screen blurred. Drive active, Yuna reported. Her voice was tight. Cascade pattern forming. Beginning fold sequence in 3, 2, 1. The universe twisted. Minho had been in space for 20 years. He had experienced launch G-forces, explosive decompression, even a ship-to-ship collision once. Nothing prepared him for this. Space didn't expand or contract, it folded. He could see it happening through the view screen, the stars ahead and the stars behind somehow overlapping, occupying the same space. Distance became meaningless. His mind tried to process what his eyes were seeing and couldn't quite manage it. Status. He called out, I don't know. Hyeri shouted back. Her hands moved over the controls, but the instruments showed readings that made no sense. We're moving, but we're also not moving. We're here and there and… Captain, I don't know how to describe this. Kim stared at his navigation display. According to our instruments, we just covered 3 light years. In 5 seconds. That's impossible, Security Chief Park Ji-ho said. Look at the view screen, Kim replied. The stars had changed. They weren't in the same region of space anymore. In engineering, Yuna was laughing. It was a slightly wild sound edged with hysteria and triumph. It's working. Jihoon, it's actually working. Jihoon stared at the readings. We're not moving through space. We're making space smaller. Doctor, this is incredible. But Yuna had noticed something else. The cascade pattern is more stable than the simulations predicted. Space itself is helping us. It's like space wants to fold this way, but nothing has ever tried before. Can we do it again? Minho asked over the comm. Yes, but we should wait a few minutes. Let the cascade settle. Those few minutes gave everyone time to process what had just happened. Medical Officer Dr. Yoon Seo-young ran scans on the crew. Some nausea and disorientation, but nothing serious, she reported. Whatever just happened, it didn't hurt us. Outside, chaos erupted among the watching alien ships. 347 vessels suddenly activated every sensor they had. Ships that had been peacefully observing began moving erratically. Some jumped away immediately as if afraid. Others moved closer, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The Galactic Council's emergency channel lit up. Bethrek's voice was no longer calm. What did you do? Our instruments detected a massive space-time distortion. Captain Minho, explain yourself immediately. Just following the route, Counselor, Minho replied. Is there a problem? There was a long pause. You should not be where you are. It's impossible. You've covered distance that should have taken you 3 days. Then I guess we're faster than you expected. Minho cut the connection and turned to his crew. Ready for another jump? The cascade is stable, Yuna confirmed. We can continue. Then let's show them what humanity can do. Initiating second jump. The Prometheus folded space again, and again. Each jump took them further along the route, covering in seconds what should have taken days. The crew began to adapt to the strange sensations. Harry even started to enjoy it, whooping each time they emerged somewhere new. But not everyone was celebrating. On the Vexari flagship, the insect commander watched with growing alarm. They've covered half the route in less than a day, he clicked to his officers. This technology is too dangerous. Dispatch interceptors. We must stop them. The Thalron Empire sent similar orders. The Orioth Collective did the same. Within hours, ships from 3 different civilizations were racing to intercept the Prometheus. Not to help them. To stop them. On the bridge of the human ship, Kim noticed the new contacts first. Captain, we have multiple vessels converging on our position. They're moving fast. Identify them. Vexari, Thalron, and Orioth. Sir, I think they're trying to intercept us. Park Ji-ho moved to the tactical station. Weapons powered and locked onto us. They're not here to talk. Minho felt cold. The challenge had been clear. Complete the route in under 10 days. Nothing had been said about other ships interfering. But of course the Council hadn't thought humanity would actually succeed. They hadn't planned for this possibility. Dr. Choi, Minho called. How fast can we jump? We need at least 10 minutes between jumps to let the cascade pattern stabilize. If we jump too frequently, we risk destabilizing the field. And if the field destabilizes, Yuna's pause told him everything he needed to know. We could tear a hole in space-time, or get scattered across different dimensions, or just explode. Hard to say. 6 ships closing, Kim reported. They'll intercept in 15 minutes. Then we have time for one more jump, Minho decided. Prepare the cascade. We jump in 9 minutes. Those 9 minutes felt like hours. The alien ships drew closer. The Prometheus's crew watched the displays, knowing that if they were attacked before the drive was ready, they had no real defenses. The ship was built for speed, not combat. 7 minutes, Kim counted. On the Vexari interceptor, the commander received new orders directly from the home fleet. The humans must not complete the run. They've discovered something too dangerous. Stop them. Lethal force authorized. 5 minutes. They're powering weapons, Ji-ho reported. All 6 ships. 3 minutes. Yeri's hands were steady on the controls, but her voice shook. Captain, they're going to fire before we can jump. Minho looked at the countdown. 3 minutes until they could safely activate the drive. The alien ships would be in firing range in 1. He had to make a choice. Risk the jump early and possibly destroy his ship, or wait and definitely be destroyed by enemy fire. Dr. Choi, he said calmly. Can we jump now? Not safely, Yuna replied. The cascade pattern isn't stable yet. I didn't ask if it was safe. I asked if we can. There was a pause. Then Yuna laughed again, that slightly wild sound. Oh, what the hell? Yes, we can. It'll either work or kill us all. Those are my favorite odds, Minho said. Jump now. Reality twisted again, but this time it hurt. Pain shot through every nerve in Minho's body. Not physical pain, something worse. It felt like reality itself was disagreeing with his existence. Around him, the bridge crew cried out. The view screen showed impossible things. Stars that existed in multiple places at once. Space that was inside out. Colors that shouldn't exist, then it stopped. They were somewhere else. Somewhere far from the alien interceptors. But something was wrong. Damage report. Minho called out, forcing his voice to stay steady despite the throbbing in his head. Hull integrity at 97%, Jiho reported. But our sensors are glitching. Half of them say we're exactly where we're supposed to be. The other half say we're nowhere at all. Engineering? Minho called. No response. Dr. Choi's status. Yuna's voice finally came through, but it was strained. We're alive. That's the good news. The bad news is we just jumped through partially collapsed space and the drive core is showing some damage. Nothing critical, but we can't jump again for at least an hour. Where are we? Navigator Kim stared at his displays comparing data. Middle of the Kepler run, right where we should be. We've covered 3/4 of the route. Captain, we're on day 3. At this rate, we'll finish with days to spare. For a moment, hope surged through Minho. Then the sensors cleared enough to show new contacts. The alien ships, Kim said quietly. They followed us somehow. All 6? No, sir, just 3. The Vixari interceptors must not have been fast enough, but we still have 3 Thalran cruisers closing on our position. Minho slammed his fist on the armrest. They couldn't jump. They couldn't fight. They were sitting targets. Time until they reach us? 20 minutes. Down in engineering, Yuna and Jihoon worked frantically to repair the drive core. The early jump had caused microfractures in the crystalline structures. Nothing that would cause immediate failure, but enough to prevent another cascade until they stabilized. 15 minutes minimum, Jihoon said, examining the damage. That's if we skip every safety check. We don't have 15 minutes, Yuna replied. She pulled up the sensor data, showing the approaching Thalran cruisers. 3 massive ships, each one capable of destroying the Prometheus with a single volley. Then something occurred to her. Jihoon, the crystalline structures on the drive core. They're similar to Thalran biology, right? What? I mean, yes, superficially. Both use quantum-locked crystal matrices. Why? Because the Thalran have been using their drive technology for millions of years. They've perfected it, optimized it, made it completely safe and predictable. So they've forgotten that there are other ways to manipulate space-time. Yuna pulled up Professor Park's original notes. Buried deep in the equations was a side calculation. Something the professor had noted and then dismissed as too unstable. What if we don't repair the drive? What if we use the damage? That's insane. We could blow up? We're going to get blown up anyway if we just sit here. On the bridge, Minho received Yuna's proposal. You want to activate a damaged drive core and hope it does something useful instead of killing us all? The mathematics say it should create a dispersal cascade, Yuna explained rapidly. Instead of folding space in one direction, it'll fold in multiple random directions. We'll still move, but unpredictably. Can the Thalran follow? Their drives are too stable. Too perfect. They can only create controlled folds. If we start cascading randomly, they won't be able to predict where we'll end up. Minho looked at his crew. Here he was pale but determined. Kim looked terrified but nodded. Jiho just shrugged, his hand resting on the weapons controls even though everyone knew their weapons were useless against Thalran shields. Dr. Yoon, Minho called to the medical bay. Prepare for possible casualties. Everyone else, strap in tight. The Thalran cruisers were close enough now that Minho could see them on the view screen. Beautiful ships, all curves and elegant lines, glowing with internal light like their creators. Weapons charged, ready to fire, Dr. Choi, Minho said. Do it. Yuna initiated the cascade with shaking hands. The drive core began to spin, but this time the pattern was wrong. Instead of smooth pulses of light, the crystalline structures flickered chaotically. The ship shuddered. Cascade forming, Yuna reported. It's unstable, just like we wanted. Jumping in 3, 2, 1, the universe went insane. The Prometheus didn't jump to one location. It jumped to 7 locations simultaneously. For a fraction of a second, Captain Minho existed in 7 different places, seeing 7 different views of space. His mind couldn't process it. Nobody's could. Then reality snapped back together and they were somewhere new. The Thalran cruisers were gone, left far behind, but before anyone could celebrate, the drive jumped again. And again. Each jump was involuntary, uncontrolled, sending them bouncing through space like a stone skipping across water. "Shut it down," Minho shouted. "I'm trying," Yuna yelled back. "The cascade won't stop. It's feeding on itself." The bridge crew held on as the ship jumped again. This time they passed through something that registered on sensors as pure energy. For one terrifying moment, they were inside a star, though the ship's shield somehow held. Another jump. They emerged in normal space, but everything looked wrong. The stars were too bright, too close together. "Where are we?" Minho demanded. Kim checked and rechecked his readings. "I don't know. This doesn't match any known star charts. Captain, I think we just jumped into a region of space that's never been mapped." Another jump. This time the Prometheus passed through something that made all their instruments scream warnings. When they emerged, Jiho was staring at his tactical display in disbelief. "Captain, I just tracked our position for the last 3 jumps. We moved backward through space. We passed through the same region twice, 17 seconds apart. But the second time, that region was in a different state, like we arrived before we left." "Time travel?" Hieri asked, her voice high with stress. "No," Yuna said over the comm. She sounded excited despite the danger. "We're not traveling through time. We're jumping through dimensions where time flows at different rates. We're seeing space from angles that shouldn't exist." Another violent jump. Medical Officer Yoon's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, I need you to know, whatever we're experiencing isn't hurting us physically. My scans show the crew is fine. Terrified, but fine. It's like our bodies are adapting to each jump." "That's impossible," Kim said. "Everything about this is impossible," Yoon shot back. The jumps continued, each one taking them to stranger places. They passed through a nebula that existed in 4 dimensions. They skimmed the event horizon of a black hole, close enough that time visibly slowed around them. They emerged briefly in a space where physics worked backward, where entropy decreased instead of increased. And through it all, Yuna and Jihoon worked to stabilize the cascade. It took 20 jumps and 15 minutes of terror before they finally managed to shut down the drive. When the ship stopped moving, everyone sat in stunned silence. Medical Officer Yoon ran scans. Engineering checked systems. Navigation tried to figure out where they were. Finally, Kim spoke. "Captain, I have good news and impossible news." "Give me the impossible news first." "The impossible news is we're at the end of the Kepler run, right at the finish line. The good news is, according to the timer, we've only been traveling for 3 days and 8 hours. Minho stared at the view screen. Sure enough, there was the finish marker, an energy gate identical to the one they had started from. Beyond it, hundreds of alien ships waited in formations, presumably expecting wreckage to emerge if anything emerged at all. "How?" Minho whispered. Yuna's voice came through, exhausted but triumphant. "We jumped through spaces that don't normally intersect with our dimension. We found shortcuts that the galaxy doesn't know exist because their technology is too advanced to stumble into them by accident. We were so desperate and so reckless that we discovered paths that have been there all along, just invisible to anyone who wasn't crazy enough to look." Minho started to laugh. It was a tired, slightly hysterical sound. His crew joined in. They had done it. Against every law of physics that the galaxy believed in, against predictions of failure, against ships sent to stop them, they had done it. "All crew," Minho announced. "Prepare to cross the finish line. Let's go show them what humanity is capable of." But as they moved toward the marker, sensors detected something new. An Oriath vessel materialized directly in their path, energy-based beings that could phase through normal matter. And this one wasn't just observing, it was moving to intercept. The Oriath vessel didn't look like a ship. It looked like a cloud of glowing particles held together by will alone. As the Prometheus approached the finish line, the energy being moved directly into their path and stopped. "They're hailing us," Hieri reported. "Put them through." The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Minho had heard before. It sounded like music and static combined, translated by their systems into words. Human vessel, you must not cross the finish line. Why not? Minho asked, keeping his voice calm. What you have done is dangerous. You have accessed regions of space that were meant to remain separate. You have disturbed barriers that have existed since the universe was young. This technology cannot be allowed to exist. In engineering, Yuna felt ice in her stomach. They're going to destroy us. We came all this way and they're going to kill us right before we finish. Jihoon was checking sensors. Doctor, the Oriath ship is phasing. It's going to materialize inside our hull. On the bridge, Security Chief Jiho saw the same readings. Captain, the energy signature is moving toward us. They're going to board us directly. All crew, prepare for hostile boarding, Minho ordered. But he knew it was hopeless. What could they do against beings made of pure energy? The Oriath entity phased through the Prometheus's hull like it wasn't there. Alarms blared. The crew felt a presence moving through the ship, cold and ancient. It was heading toward engineering. Yuna grabbed Jihoon's arm. Get everyone out now. I'm not leaving you. Someone has to protect the drive. That's what they're here to destroy. Go. Jihoon ran, herding the other engineers out. Yuna stood alone in the engineering bay as the Oriath entity materialized in front of her. It took a form roughly humanoid but composed entirely of shifting light and energy. You are Dr. Choi Yuna, the entity said. Its voice resonated inside her head. You created this drive system. I completed what Professor Park started, Yuna replied. Her voice shook, but she stood her ground. Professor Park Sunho died testing these theories. Yet you continued his work. Why? Because he was right. Because the galaxy needs to know there are other ways to move through space. Because the entity moved closer. Yuna could feel its energy pressing against her, examining her. Because you are driven by pride and desperation. You wish to prove humanity's worth. You wish to show that newer civilizations can match older ones. What's wrong with that? Nothing. And everything. The entity reached toward the drive core. This technology could destroy space-time itself if misused. The calculations your professor made were correct but incomplete. There are dangers he did not foresee. Then teach us, Yuna shouted. Help us understand instead of destroying our work. That is not our way. We have protected the galaxy for 3 billion years. We eliminate threats before they can spread. The entity's energy began to build. Yuna realized with horror that it was going to overload the drive core. The explosion would destroy the Prometheus and prove to the galaxy that human technology was too dangerous. Wait, Yuna said desperately. If you destroy this ship, you prove nothing. You just confirm everyone's belief that we should have stayed in our corner of space. But if you let us finish, if you let us prove we can handle this technology responsibly, you show that new species can contribute to the galaxy's knowledge. The entity paused. You are attempting to manipulate me. I'm attempting to appeal to your curiosity. You've existed for billions of years. Doesn't any part of you want to see what happens when a species discovers something new? Don't you want to know where this path leads? For a long moment, the entity was silent. Then it spoke, and its voice carried something that might have been amusement. 3 billion years, and I have never heard a being on the edge of death argue philosophy. You are. Interesting, Dr. Choi Yuna. The energy building around the drive core dissipated. The entity pulled back slightly. I will not destroy your ship, it said. But know this. I am called Vel Ash, and I have been watching humanity since you first split the atom. You are young and reckless and brilliant. If you survive what comes next, we will speak again. The entity began to phase out, but before it vanished completely, it spoke once more. The drive core has a flaw. 3rd quantum layer, 7th harmonic resonance. Fix it, or your next jump will tear the ship apart. Then it was gone. Yuna stood frozen for a moment. Then she ran to the drive core, pulling up the specifications for the 3rd quantum layer. She scanned through the calculations and found it. A tiny error in Professor Park's original equations. Something that hadn't mattered for the jumps they had made so far, but would become catastrophic in future use. Captain, she called over the comm. We're clear. The Oriath isn't going to stop us, but I need 10 minutes for one more repair. You have 5, Minho replied. The Galactic Council is demanding we either cross the finish line or withdraw. I think they're afraid we'll succeed. Yuna worked faster than she ever had in her life. Jihoon returned and helped without questions. Together they recalibrated the quantum harmonics, fixing the flaw that could have killed them all on some future voyage. Done, Yuna finally said. We're ready. On the bridge, Minho looked at his crew. They were exhausted, terrified, and triumphant all at once. They had survived impossible challenges. They had discovered paths through space that the galaxy didn't know existed. They had proven that humanity's different approach to science could succeed where conventional wisdom said it would fail. "Take us across," Minho ordered. The Prometheus moved forward. As they approached the finish line, every sensor on every alien ship focused on them. The enormous gate began to glow as it prepared to record their passage. The official timer showed 3 days, 19 hours, and 43 minutes since they had crossed the starting gate. They passed through. The galaxy exploded with signals. Ships from hundreds of civilizations transmitted simultaneously. The Galactic Council's emergency channel lit up with dozens of voices talking over each other. Finally, High Counselor Vethrak's voice cut through the chaos. "Silence!" The crystalline being's body pulsed with light. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. The mockery was gone. "Captain Minho, how?" "We asked different questions," Minho replied simply. "And we were desperate enough to try answers that seemed impossible." The council chamber, broadcast across space, showed hundreds of alien representatives in stunned silence. Finally, Vethrak spoke again. "The Galactic Council recognizes humanity's completion of the Kepler run in record time. By the terms of our agreement, humanity is granted provisional membership in the Federation." Cheers erupted on the Prometheus. The crew hugged each other, laughing and crying. They had done it. They had actually done it, but Vethrak wasn't finished. "We also recognize that humanity has developed technology we do not understand. Technology that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about physics. This is troubling and fascinating. What happens now?" Minho asked. "Now," the High Counselor said, "we stop laughing, and we start listening." The connection ended. The Prometheus began its journey back to Earth, escorted by a dozen alien vessels. But these weren't interceptors sent to destroy them. These were science ships sent to observe and study. In engineering, Yuna stood in front of the drive core. She pulled out a small hollow image of Professor Park and placed it on her console. "We did it, Professor," she whispered. "They're not laughing anymore." Days later, the Prometheus arrived at Earth orbit. The entire planet celebrated. Dr. Han Jiwoo met them at the station with tears in his eyes. Admiral Baek Soo-jin wore a smile wider than anyone had ever seen on her face. But Yuna was called to a private meeting with the Admiral and several government officials. They wanted to know everything about the Cascade Drive. They wanted to build more ships. They wanted to explore those strange dimensions the Prometheus had passed through. "We changed everything," Yuna told them. "Every assumption the galaxy made about physics needs to be reconsidered. There are paths through space that have existed forever, but nobody looked for them because they were too busy perfecting the paths they already knew. And you found them by accident," one official said. "We found them by being too ignorant to know they were impossible," Yuna corrected. "Sometimes not knowing the rules means you don't know which ones you can break." 3 months later, humanity launched 5 more ships equipped with Cascade drives. Captain Minho commanded a mission to map the strange dimensions they had discovered. Dr. Shin Hana, who had survived against all odds, led a team studying the quantum harmonics. And Yuna received a message on an untraceable channel. It was from Velash, the Oriath entity. "You fixed the flaw," the message said. "I am pleased. Your species shows promise. But remember, every new path through space comes with dangers you cannot yet imagine. Be cautious. Be curious. And when you are ready, seek me out. I have much to teach, and it seems I have much to learn." Yuna stood on the observation deck of the Sol Orbital shipyard, watching the construction of humanity's newest ships. The galaxy had stopped laughing. Some species were angry. Others were afraid. But many were curious. Earth had proven that arriving late to galactic civilization wasn't a disadvantage. It was an opportunity, a chance to see problems with fresh eyes, a chance to ask questions nobody else thought to ask. The Prometheus hung in dock, being refitted for its next mission.